Okay, now that we're on the record, does everyone remember who they are? Because there will be a quiz. I I actually really love that particular chant, and it does get stuck in my head. So apologies for that if you all have an earworm after today. Okay, so for those who are new, have you been here with us before? You look a little familiar, you know? Okay.
Me too. Yeah, we go to the Golden Gate Center in Cormadera.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And
Is that Reverend Mary
Marsha's-
Mary Shelton?
Yeah, she's.
Oh, okay.
But we go back and forth from here in the Bay Area.
Oh,
We used to go to the church over near the Tahoe Yacht Club.
yeah, that's where
us.
that's
Yeah.
us. We have moved a couple of times. So we were at the marina, then we had our own building actually in Carnelian Bay, and now we're here. So we're still here.
Yeah, we're happy that you started.
Yeah, I'm glad you found us too. So what's different since the time you were at the marina location is that we are now a teaching chapter. So it functions a little bit differently than what you're probably familiar with, in that we don't have a minister. I'm the spiritual director, but myself and Nancy and Carol and the practitioners, we come together to offer the teaching of science of mind and also our Sunday celebrations. But my preferred format, when it's my turn, is I like to have discussions. Quite a while ago, I realized that I wasn't really that excited about necessarily sitting and listening to someone deliver a prepared talk. Almost always there was something in it for me. I mean, there always is. If you're paying attention, there's always something for you. But I much prefer this format of having a discussion. So I put together some notes. I have a theme for the day, and I'll just, it was in the newsletter, but I'll just remind you what it is we're talking about today. So today we're talking about the activity of truth. So as a community, we study and teach universal spiritual principles of truth. But how does it work in the world? What benefit is there to the level of consciousness in the world if there is no activity of truth? So we'll have a guided discussion and we'll explore the ways that our knowing, acceptance, and intention create heaven on earth. So that's what we're doing. And because we're on Zoom, even though we really don't need a microphone in this little room, but in order for the people on Zoom to hear us and participate, we pass the microphone around when we're having, when you're, joined in the discussion. So that's the plan, but now we'll see how it actually unfolds. Okay, so I'm going to start out by saying that any discussion about truth must begin with an agreement about just what truth we're talking about. And I'm referencing truth here with a capital T. So first off, truth and facts are not the same. Facts are continuously changing. Truth never changes. So that's one of the hallmarks of truth. And so I submit that there is only one truth from which all reality flows. And this is that truth. God is all there is. That's it. That's the end of the story. That's the only truth that matters. God is all there is. So following that, because, we want to have a conversation about it, here are some statements about that truth. There is no place that God is not. Can we agree on that? Do we agree? There's no place that God is not. Okay. all beings are made of the substance of God. That just follows along logically. If God is all there is, then there is nothing else to be. Therefore, all being, all creation, all matter, if you will, is made of the substance of God. And we're still in agreement now? Okay, all right. So, as God is all there is no greater or lesser. Does that track? Or are we still tracking? Okay. So if that's true, then there is nothing and no one outside of the love of God. Still in agreement. We're still in agreement. Okay. Because there will be a quiz. No, I'm kidding. Okay. So accepting all of this, how does it look in my daily life? And I just want to remind you, Carol, just make sure you raise your hand or speak up or something for you to participate in the conversation. Because I know that you have some pearls of wisdom here. I'm counting on it. Okay. So, if I lived this truth, and going back to the reminder of what the truth is that we're talking about, that there's only one thing going on here. If I lived this truth, and all others lived this truth, then we would greet each other with the recognition of the beloved. We would see the substance of God looking back at us. With nothing and no one to fear, we are in heaven on earth. So, anybody want to share an example of a moment, of a time, might be just a glimpse, when you might have had that recognition that God was looking back at you through the eyes of someone you've met?
I try to, when I meet a stranger or, just a checker at the supermarket or something like that, I try to always create a moment where I look in their eyes to offer that. But I find that a lot of times there's not a recognition coming back toward me. It's like it takes two to tango with that, and sometimes people want to participate with it and sometimes people don't. And when you were talking, I always think of, I just love that little part in that movie Avatar where that group of people living on that planet greet each other with the words, "I see you." I just love that. I mean, it just, yeah, I see you. I know. It's such a great greeting. Yeah. And the other thing is, I can't get this out of my mind, so I'm going to ask you this first. Why did you decide to call this the activity of truth? The only reason I'm saying that is because I've never heard of truth referred to as an activity before. And I wondered about that when I saw it in print. And yeah.
Okay. I promise she's not a plant, and I didn't set that up. I've been thinking about this a lot, and the reason that I landed on this talk title is because I've been listening to a lot of talking heads. I say that in the most loving way. But I am very interested in the perspectives of people and what they think about whatever. And so there's a lot of talk going on. I'm very interested now in seeing what the action is that follows that talk. And I am not speaking specifically about marching or signing petitions or, letters to your Congress people and representatives, I'm not really speaking about that because that's a lot of the conversation that I've been listening to. I want to know what it looks like in my day-to-day life, in my life and in your life, and how this truth that there is only God, that God is all there is, what does it look like in life? And you mentioned that when you have an encounter with someone you don't know, like say a checker, and you try to, or you not try to, you do. There is no try, right?
Yeah.
That's, yes. You do create a moment when you look in their eyes and you're fully present to them when you say, hello, good morning, how are you today? And that experience of having no reciprocal recognition is a very common one, because we're greeting someone who is at very likely because they're at their job and their attention is focused on the job at hand. Their attention is not necessarily focused on the beings that are around them. Their attention is on their task. So that's a recognition, though, but you created that window, that opportunity. And I really believe this. That person who had no recognition of the moment that was being created, it is our invitation to look beyond the appearance of that, to look through it, and to see indeed that that person is the face of God. Yeah. So, speaking about the face of God, we were talking about what songs to play today, and Diana said, "Oh, I'm saving the face of God for a couple weeks from now when Reverend Eileen will be here." And yeah, you can play that song. Are you familiar with the face of God? Yeah, you are the face of God. That would have been a really good song for today. But first I have to remember that I am the face of God too. So that's where we start. So we'll start. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, one more thing. So when you say the activity of truth, are you kind of saying the expansion of truth? Like if it's, what is activity implies some sort of movement or something, action. So are you implying that truth is expanding always?
Yes. And I really want to drill down to how we step out into the world every day in the most mundane ways. And so I've been reading the. Oh, sorry.
She's reaching out to you.
Yes.
Well, I think the activity for truth for me is wanting to continue to picture the unfolding of more desirable conditions and letting go of the illusions. And so my word coming here today, because I try to think of the word that I want to manifest this into this future. The future is right now or tomorrow, and today the word was honesty. So it's so I'm trying to manifest the activity of truth into visualizing and verbalizing what I want to see more of. So.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else? Oh, everybody's so shy today.
Being the only guy in the group here, throw some male energy in here. So I think one of the things that I observe is most people don't recognize themselves as being spiritual beings. we live in a world that is in many ways anything but spiritual. It's finite. It's you know, getting stuff, moving stuff, controlling things. And I'm very new to the science of mind. I just recently took a foundations course with Reverend Mary earlier this year. And the one thing that opened my eyes was when we studied the concept of immortality. And I won't get into the whole details of everything, but basically, after going through that one module, I did not fear death nearly as much as I did prior to studying this. And in that thinking, I started thinking of myself as a spiritual being that endures beyond the flesh. And I think when you talk about truth and looking at somebody in the eye, it's a recognition that every other human being is a spiritual being. Many people aren't in tune with that, but I find that my relationships are a heck of a lot better with that concept in mind. And it's been pretty significant change for me. Just Wayne. My name's Wayne. Yeah. Anyway, that's a.
Yeah. And I just want to mention that taking a class is an activity of truth. That is an activity of truth. And Wayne, thank you very much for being a plant for me today too. Because I've been reading this book by Joel Goldsmith. Anybody familiar with Joel Goldsmith? There's some, yes, I see some. Anyway, this is The Government of Eden. And this little gem, I mean, of course, the whole book, but he says, I have known from the beginning that we were dealing with a spiritual universe and that the evil in it wasn't real. But I never knew why, nor did I know how we came into the state of being out of Eden until the revelation came. The revelation came in those passages where God said, "Who told you you were naked?" And then I knew that something was wrong. Then when it said, "The knowledge of good and evil," and Adam and Eve were thrown out of Eden, that gave me the whole secret. Eden represents our spiritual domain. Eden represents the state of harmony or heaven. Eden represents our immortality, our state of divine being. What threw us out of that into what the Master called this world, there is, as plain as anyone can read, the knowledge of good and evil. That's what did it. For weeks, I didn't get over the shaking that I got from the intensity of that revelation, that the cause of all the trouble on the face of the earth is the belief in good and evil. Nobody can stay in the Garden of Eden, of harmony, of perfection, while they are accepting in their mind the belief of good and evil. So I read this, and it really struck a chord within me, because there's this whole understanding from Genesis, that we recognize that the story of Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden is allegory. And yet there is a very deep truth here, that they lived in harmony and peace, and they were abundantly supplied with everything necessary for life until they ate the fruit of the forbidden tree, which implanted in their minds the idea of good and evil. But because before there was ever an idea that there was anything other than just the goodness of God, then they were happy and they were whole. And so that one act, that one mad idea, if you will, that there is something other than God, expelled them from the Garden of Eden. So today, when we're talking about the activity of truth, and we have agreed together that the one truth is the truth that God is all there is, brings us back into the Garden of Eden. It brings us back into heaven on earth. Because when I can walk in the world and I can see past the illusions of separate beings, of otherness, of the appearance of evil, I can see past all of that, then I am back in the Garden of Eden. I have completely taken away any power or perceived power that evil ever had. And that is the activity that I'm talking about. The activity is seeing beyond the appearances, seeing past the person who's distracted by their task, but still seeing the divinity in that person. Of seeing past the appearance of, we've talked about this before, the garbage dump, that we can look at the incredible beauty that we're immersed in and recognize that the pile of garbage is simply an appearance, it's not a truth. And we're still immersed in the immeasurable beauty that we're surrounded by. There's a whole bunch of different ways of expressing the things that we have been talking about for a whole time, in this community and in all of the communities around. Taking a foundations course absolutely exposes you to a lot of these ideas that will begin to sound more and more familiar. And I have this one underlined. The Master taught, resist not evil. Put up thy sword. Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. I am convinced that the light of the world does not argue with darkness or fight darkness or try to remove darkness, but rather the light, being the light, no darkness can exist in its presence. So here's the first question in the quiz of the day. Is darkness a thing? Does it have a source? Yeah.
Oh, Susie. And Wayne, right. I absolutely think that darkness exists, and now that place, we can come to places of light, but, sometimes we need to get to our knees before we can go through the darkness, the shadows of an experience. And, sometimes God, pushes us there because, he keeps getting the little messages, but finally, till we get to our knees, do we get to see the truth in action, and then the light is revealed.
Thank you, Susie. So we had this conversation, let's see, some of us had this conversation just recently about surrender, the idea about surrender. And you talk about get to your knees. And I like that's a very familiar imagery. And I like the idea of surrendering as a similar activity. But yeah, we come to that place where there's a realization that I can't go on from this place of struggle and conflict and lack and limitation. There's no joy here. There's no joy. And so I had my personal surrender of coming to surrender, and then from that moment on, nothing was ever the same. And I submit that the darkness that I was experiencing all around me, every single aspect, all of my relationships, all of my, my physical being, the pain, the physical pain I experienced, and all of those things, all of that darkness. The moment I became the light, the darkness dissipated. It was no longer there. And I was, at the time that I was undergoing this transformation, I was experiencing a great deal of physical pain. I had had an injury that affected my ability to walk, and walking in really any kind of movement was very painful. Did it immediately resolve? No, it didn't, but it no longer felt like an attack. It wasn't an attack. It was a call for healing. It was a call for attention, but it was no longer an attack. And therefore, the darkness lost its power over me. So that's one way to look at it. So when you walk into a room and you flip the light switch and the lights come on, you can see that there's not a battle between light and dark. The darkness just dissipates. It's not really a thing.
Yeah, I think sometimes we make things so complicated and we build up so much difficulty in our minds over things that we're afraid of. But, yesterday I was listening on Instagram to this adorable little feng shui master, and he was saying, basically, he said, if you don't like something, don't think about it. He said, if you don't like something and you think about it, it's going to get bigger. And which is so, what we believe in Science Mind. But that's so simple. And I think sometimes we get so lost in the weeds about all the scary stuff around us that we just don't see that simple thing. Just don't think about it. When we are giving power to it, when we think about it and allowing it to grow and get bigger.
So just thinking about that, I was also thinking about how cognizant you have to be of where you are and all of the evil and the darkness and suffering, and to just not think about it. Sometimes it's not that easy. Right. So you have to really consider where you are and what you can do to moderate that thinking. And I know in Science of Mind we use a lot of affirmations, but like what the feng shui guy said was that the more you think about, the more it shows up, which is so true. And we all know the power of our word, but sometimes it sounds easier than it actually is, especially in our world right now. To switch in our minds when a lot is coming at you that's very negative, to make that change in our mind that I don't have to think about this, or I don't have to watch the news or whatever. I don't have to do that, and I can think of only good. But it takes a lot to think of good.
Well, that's, Nancy, what you're saying about the news is what I've been thinking about this whole time about how do we overcome all this? I happen to live with a CNN addicted daughter, and it's difficult, to ignore it. But I mean, I manage to do that. But and she manages too. She does something else while she has the news on. But that can't help but being absorbed by her body or her thought or whatever. So even though she talks about the universe a lot, and how she can be influencing it in her affirmations and things like that. So she does have that in her mind. So yeah, I get it's not just her thoughts, but it's my thoughts too. I was just thinking what Nancy was saying is trying to you can't ignore it that it's happening, but how do you um, recognize that there's God in all and that it is what it is? It is what it's supposed to be, I guess, for lack of better words.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Rather than not thinking about it, it's better, I think, to and it's not a confrontation, but to just change the dialogue and the way that you see it, and to recognize, when we look at out at the world and we see people who are starting wars and starving other people and taking control of taking control of others against their will. There's so much of that going on right now. And what we can do rather than ignoring it is to see all the players involved as their higher truth, and just to know that there's God in them, and whatever they're doing here, Earth is kind of a crazy place, and it makes people do crazy things because they just don't know better. They don't know what we know, and that's not a judgment against them. I'm not saying that we're better than they are. They just haven't run into a different way to see things, or perhaps have rejected it if they have. But there is another way to see things, and somebody has to do it. It's us. We have to take the higher road and see the truth of who they really are. And that's the way I believe to look at things in the world that are difficult and painful and upsetting.
Thanks, Sue. I appreciate those comments.
Yeah, and thanks, Carol, too. Yeah, that's exactly it. That we are called to see beyond the appearances. Instead of looking away and denying the conditions that exist right now, we are called to look directly at it and look beyond it. So, what does it feel like to look? It's a correction. It is a correction. So we look beyond the appearances, but what we're seeing is that the person involved, whatever scenario it is, the person or people involved, they are divine beings. They are literally one with us. There is no other. So we recognize that each one of us is individuated, and each one of us is supremely unique in our expression of the one. So I can look at a being who is behaving in a certain way that is the antithesis of what we know to be true. And I can see that that person is not evil, not separated from God, not other than what I am. But that person is deeply unconscious. They are sleeping. They are completely immersed and trapped in an illusion of their own creation. And so we look beyond that person and their actions and their beliefs and their ideology. We look completely beyond that, and we see a reflection of ourselves in slumber, in unconsciousness. And so what are we called to do? We are not called to attack that person. We're not called to shake them by the shoulders and tell them to wake up. That has never worked in the history of mankind. We are called to be the light, to be the light. And so my friend Joel here has some very juicy wisdom about this, but I might have had a couple of other things too about that. I have to refer to my notes. Forgot what I said to myself. I am convinced that the light of the world does not argue with darkness, or try to remove darkness, or fight darkness, but rather the light, being the light, no darkness can exist in its presence. And that was from page 105. But from A Course in Miracles, there's this other little pearl. Truth does not struggle against ignorance, and love does not attack fear. What needs no protection does not defend itself. Ooh. If I was the tattooing type person, I might have that tattooed on me somewhere. I don't happen to be, so I'll just, put the ink on the paper. But that idea, that singular idea that truth does not struggle against ignorance and love does not attack fear. What needs no protection does not defend itself. And so that mere idea of letting go of defensiveness, of just allowing what is to be, there is so much freedom in that. So much freedom in that idea. And then there is this particular juicy part that Joel offers in The Government of Eden. Just the title of the book was very intriguing. It's kind of interesting too. He passed away in 1964. And this book is a compilation of his lectures that he gave. So he didn't sit down to write a book. He gave a series of lectures, and then sometime after his passing, his students, because he was the teacher of a practice called the Infinite Way, his students compiled his lectures into several books. So it's extraordinary that he was lecturing back in the 50s and 60s, that which we are living today. They were. It was the Vietnam War. It was Vietnam. And it was the Cold War. And it was, civil rights, yeah. So he writes, without the sword of offense or the armor of defense. So that goes back to what about that. The truth needs no defense. So he says, you are not going to bring God's government on earth. God's government is already here. You are opening your consciousness to the truth that the kingdom of God is established on earth, that God is fulfilling itself on earth as it is in heaven. And the way in which you do that is this. So that always perks my ears up. Oh, he's going to tell us the way. As you become aware of the inharmony and the discord of the earth in the form of sin or disease or tyranny or misgovernment or bad government, As you become aware of discords and inharmony of a physical, mental, moral, or financial nature, remember that you make no effort to correct them or heal them or improve them. To go out into the world with the armor of oneness means to go out without the sword of offense or the armor of defense. Liberty is not gained by fighting or by crusading for it, but by keeping it sacred and secret within our consciousness, living it and granting it to others, and thereby watching it spread to the world. That is a rather radical concept. And I think it's true. It feels true. It resonates with me. It is confirmed by so much wisdom from so many sources. Sources in Scripture, sources in the Course in Miracles, sources in other wisdom teachings, the Way of Mastery. It's out there in the ether. This is a truth. Put away the sword and put away your armor. There's only one thing happening here, and that is God, being God, expressed through each one of us. So he goes on to say that consciousness must be lifted out of its humanhood, or its belief that self-preservation is the first law of human nature, into the Master's idea of loving another as we love ourselves, and more especially must it accept the revelation that no man on earth is our Father. There is one Father and one great brotherhood. So I give allowance to the period of time in which he was lecturing, in which he was writing, and so I can step out of my little resistance that I have to all of the patriarchal and masculine references, knowing that all beings. So knowing that there is one Father, and I can say there is one source, and there is one divine kinship that I have with all beings. So in the same degree, we are united with every individual on the face of the globe, even if most of them have not yet become aware of us, even if they have not yet become aware of the love that we feel for them, even if they have not yet become aware of the fact that we have drawn a circle and included them in it. We know it, and knowing is enough, because that knowledge transmits itself to those around us. So, talking about circling back to the idea of the activity of truth. What does it look like? I'll bet there's some more ideas now.
I was thinking about love through that whole that you were talking about, because that's what God is. It's love, and that's in the activity of truth. That is what we project out or work on within, is moving the love that we have within ourselves out in the world. That's the activity.
Yeah, that's the activity. The activity of truth is love. And I like that imagery of drawing a circle and including everything in it. And it doesn't matter if Wayne knows he's included in the circle, or Mary knows she's included in the circle. It's enough for me to know it. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you that this is just that it comes naturally to me. does not. A lot of days it's a heavy lift. I I have a dedicated daily spiritual practice that took me years to establish, of starting and stopping and being completely dedicated to it and then letting it go by the wayside. But it has stuck now for a number of years. And I honestly can tell you that that is how I put one foot in front of another, is by giving myself that gift every day of my dedicated spiritual practice. If not for that, I would be just as trapped in the illusion, just as distracted by the appearance of chaos and evil and the end of our democracy and all of these things that are in front of us right now. And I may have, probably not may have, I very likely would have given up hope and just accepted that, the world is broken and it's not going to, it's just going from bad to worse and we're going to hell in a handbasket. That's not, I don't choose to live that way. That's not my life. And I will do what is mine to do. So we have just a minute or two left, but I can tell that Sue wants to talk about what is hers to do.
Well, I was thinking about that circle thing, about drawing a circle and pulling everything in with you. And I was thinking about the fact that when you do that, you're going to pull some prickly things in. And so when you do that, you have to have a strategy for how to deal with something that's prickly and uncomfortable and difficult. And the only way to deal with it that isn't going to destroy you is to forgive it and love it.
Surrender to it.
Yeah. Surrender. Thank you. Sue, that's the first time the word forgiveness has been spoken into the circle today. And that is a pivot point, forgiveness. So when I speak about looking at what's in front of us, facing it head on and seeing past the appearance through to the truth, forgiveness is the way to do that. And by forgiveness, we're not talking about pardon. We're not talking about pardoning the horrible atrocities. We're talking about recognizing the truth. And there is a wisdom that I received that is this line: I forgive what never was, and I am free. Because that puts aside the idea of forgiveness as a pardon or condoning or any of those things. We just recognize it isn't the truth. It has no reality. And therefore, I am free. So just as we close our conversation, please accept my gratitude for everything that's been shared. And Carol, you too. And for the openness and for the willingness to get our minds around some pretty radical ideas, some pretty intense ways of being in the world, of accepting the guidance to be love, to express the nature of God into the world. And to see reflected back to us love looking back. Even if that love isn't aware of what it is. It's only sleeping. And we are here to lead each other home. I am so grateful, and so it is.